What issues should I consider for my aging parents? Let's break it down on this episode of the Hawaii Retirement Show. All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Hawaii Retirement Show. Today's episode, we're talking about what issues should I consider for my aging parents. And for those who have kind of gone through that phase of life where your parents are getting older and you find out there's a lot of things that kind of get put on your plate, then a lot of this will resonate. And for those approaching that phase of their life, hopefully this episode provides a little bit of context and some food for thought and some things to consider as you kind of head into that phase. So what I'm going to kind of talk through here is a Hawaii Retirement Show resource, a checklist that I have that I'll put up on the website. And it kind of goes through the different areas of financial planning, you could say, and brings up a few different questions to consider in each area. I'm not just going to read this verbatim, but we'll just kind of talk through some of these to give you an idea of things to consider. And if you want to check out the resource or deep dive into some of this stuff, this checklist here, you can go to the website and download it from there. But starting off, let's look at cash flow and living arrangement issues. Okay, so with aging parents, living arrangements sometimes come into question, especially if there's like a 2-story house, or if they're going to need assistance with cooking or whatever it might be, and maybe that entails them moving into an in-law suite with yourselves or with somebody else. And then the cash flow consideration is really focused around, do your parents need assistance in managing their bills, right? They have a lot of bills coming in and out that they've been doing for years, and maybe they're starting to enter a phase of dementia, forgetfulness, or it's just a little too complicated. They're getting letters in the mail. And it's good to kind of, take inventory of their cash flows before, you need to step in and help them out with things. Let's see what else we have on here. Are your parents unable to live on their own, right? So there's caregivers considerations and retirement communities, right? Is there enough funds if they need to go into a senior living? Maybe it's not a nursing home where they need care, but they want to move. They want to move from the house they've been living in into a senior community. Maybe there's considerations for that. Next section here is the estate planning issues, and that's really where you want to get to know your parents' team, if they have a team, right? Do they have a financial advisor? Do they have an accountant? Do they have an attorney? Do they have doctors, right? Do you know who these people are? And are you able to reach out to them with your parents, if need be, to help them kind of organize things? And also, in the case of them passing away, you can kind of reach out to for guidance and support as it relates to some of this stuff. The other estate planning issue with aging parents is you want to check to make sure where are the documents? Is there an estate plan, right? Who has it? Who has records of it? Who's the attorney? Is there a hard copy somewhere in the house? Do they have that really pertains to any documents, right? Is there life insurance policies? Is there long-term care policies? Where are these documents, right? Where are these, if they have investment accounts, right? Where are these statements in these documents to kind of paint a clear picture of what your parents have going on? And some of this might be easier said than done. Throughout the years, everybody's situation is different. Some aging parents are very organized and on top of things, and some of them kind of lose track of different accounts or just different things throughout the years. And it might be hard even for them to get a clear picture. And then you kind of step in and you got to kind of, make sense of all these clues of what might be out there. And most important thing with estate planning is, do they have an estate plan, right? Is there a healthcare power of attorney, the living will, celebration of life document, which kind of memorializes how they want their, whatever it is, funeral or end of life ceremonies to be like. What are the trusts? When's the last time the trusts have been, revisited? Maybe your parents are still in a good mental state. They're getting older, and they set up a trust, who knows, 30 years ago. Maybe you want to start having conversations about, like, hey, let's revisit that to make sure, it does say what you think it says, and it's achieving what you want it to achieve. Again, with estate planning is long-term care and nursing home. Is there, and when we get into that, so we'll talk about the long-term care and insurance. But as far as an estate planning strategy, there is Medicaid, right? So if you're not going to be able to afford, maybe long-term care or some of these end-of-life medical care, you can qualify for Medicaid. But to qualify for Medicaid, there's a lot of rules, and Medicaid is done through a state and federal partnership, and it requires kind of relinquishing or minimizing the amount of assets you have on hand, whether it's, I think some states are different, as a joint couple or individually, so that you can qualify for Medicaid. So maybe that's a consideration where you need to talk to an attorney who kind of specializes in this Medicaid planning for your parents, if they're going to need to qualify in the future. Then if their estate is rather large, then you want to start looking at the estate tax implications, and if there's ways to kind of work with them and work with attorneys or financial advisors to make sure that they're not hit too hard with an estate tax, whether that's at the state level or the federal. And it's quite large at the federal. I think it's it's 13.61 million, which is quite a bit. And then if it's a couple, right, it's 27.22 million. And when one passes away, you can transfer on that exclusion to the next one. Properties is a big one, right? Is there multiple properties? What is the titling of these properties? Is it, joint ownership with rights to survivorship? Is it titled to a trust? Just figuring out those kind of things. And then this is a good one where you look at your parents' accounts, right, and your bank accounts, and to see, is there joint ownership with somebody, or is there a payable on death? And if there's not, maybe there's a power of attorney, but it's always good in most situations to have somebody able to access funds for them in case something happens. Maybe they are in the hospital for a little bit, and money's got to come out to pay some sort of expense, but they're the only ones who have access to the account. It can make things hard and complicated. So it's good to set it up where somebody else in the family can kind of have access, whether that's through a power of attorney or a joint account, or even after the passing of a aging parent, if there's a payable on death, where somebody, can kind of take over the account to keep paying the bills, because it's not like the bills are going to stop, right, at that point. And then always the beneficiary designations, always good to check in on those things to make sure everything is up to date, and who the parents or even for your own accounts believe, whatever they wish the beneficiaries to be matches what is seen on the accounts. A lot of times, it falls through the cracks and people don't revisit it. You select a beneficiary 30 years later, you think it says one thing and it doesn't say, something else. Oh, or you can add contingent beneficiaries. Things have changed, and then there's per capita per stirpes. Kind of caveats to the beneficiary designation, but always good to check beneficiaries on all accounts, right? And a large part of that is, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on estate planning and get a little over my skis here, but beneficiary designations will always so to speak, trump. They're kind of first in line over a trust or will, right? So whatever the beneficiary designation says, that's where the money will go to on a, let's say an investment account, right? Even if a will says it goes somewhere else, if a custodian's holding an account and it lists beneficiaries, those beneficiaries are entitled to that account regardless of the will, right? Or what it might say elsewhere. So it's always good to check in on those beneficiaries. Now, obviously, some things can't have beneficiaries, right? A house, you can't name a beneficiary of a house, right? That's why a lot of people use a trust as a vehicle to kind of designate that. Okay, moving along, as we keep talking about issues to consider for aging parents, we get into insurance issues. And this is, life insurance. Is there, for a house, is there homeowners insurance that we need to be aware of, or an umbrella policy? And then the big one here, I think, is long-term care, right? Long-term care is kind of, with the aging population, unlike car insurance, you have car insurance, and the odds are you're probably not going to need it, right? You're probably not going to get in an accident statistically. Long-term care, the odds are a little bit more likely that you're going to need it, right? Not everybody does, and not everybody needs long-term care insurance. Maybe they're self-funding their insurance, but long-term care insurance is widely used, right? And it's needed by a large portion of the population. And with long-term care costs being so high and apparently showing not too many signs of slowing down as far as the growing cost of long-term care insurance, it's good to know, do your parents have a long-term care insurance policy? What does that policy stipulate, right? How many years does it pay out? What is the maximum? Is there, some sort of spousal transfer of the long-term care policy? It's good to just get a deep dive and know, okay, what do we have covered for long-term care? And maybe it's mom and dad set aside money and they self-funded and said, well, we have this big bucket of money that we earmarked in case something happens and we need long-term care to be put in a nursing home, and this is gonna satisfy that. Okay, moving along here, tax planning issues. Deductible medical expenses. Towards the end of life, there's a lot of medical expenses. Most of us don't just pass off to old age. Most of us have issues that kind of pop up. I don't know, heart things, cancer, or dementia. And there's medical issues. There's testing, right? And so there's a lot of medical bills and expenses that come in. It's good keeping track of that because there's tax implications, right? You can expense out or deduct certain qualified, unreimbursed medical expenses. And let's see here. So it's just like, with itemizing the deductions here, it has to exceed 7.5% of the AGI, right? But it gets, the tax code just gets really, I try to keep it high level, but there's just so much to dive into here, and you really should consult your CPA or your tax advisor, because things like, maybe you got to make modifications to the home to put in a ramp, and part of that could be deductible. Maybe it's you got to travel somewhere to get medical treatment for your parents, and maybe you could get some mileage, and part of the hotel is deductible and stuff like that. And it just gets very complicated, but it's good to just kind of keep a running tally, keep a record of these things, consult your CPA, consult your tax advisor, and see if you can get a little bit of a deduction for your parents because of medical expenses, then why not, right? Take care of it. I know it's hard, maybe with everything going on, everybody's got a busy life, but if you can, it can be beneficial to you. Let's see what else we have for tax planning issues here. Yeah, I think we'll leave it there. Unrealized tax losses, an account owned by your parents, right? So we're talking about, that's a big one with basis and step up in basis. And this is less with aging parents, but as your parents, pass away or loved ones pass away, right? There's always the tax planning around step up in basis, right? Entitling properties and kind of taking advantage of it the whole step up in basis conversation. Asset and debts. So let's see here. What do we have? Any expenses that might require your parents to sell any investments, right? So maybe the money's running tight because of all the long-term care and everything else, and maybe they have to start dipping into some investment accounts that they haven't before, and you got to go through and start liquidating certain assets to kind of cover their costs of living as they keep aging. And then, are there any assets or accounts that should be consolidated? That's a good one, because I'm a big believer in consolidating. I think around the, especially once you leave the workforce and you kind of head into retirement, and that's kind of a lot of what I do is the retirement planning. I think consolidating the number of accounts and the complexity around everything. I mean, it's easier said than done, but it helps you manage what you have because everything is consolidated. You can see it clearly. You don't have all these different accounts and policies spread all over the place. And then also too, it just makes things easier for those children or nieces and nephews, whoever has to come in and help you later. If everything's consolidated, it just makes things simple for them. And then also too, with the, obviously with passing on, and somebody comes in, they don't know what's going on anywhere. And if you never consolidated, you got, real estate here and this over there, and in this brokerage account that you used to have, and this, consolidating things down, if you can, and if it's feasible, is always a good route in my mind. Last thing here, let's see, other issues, state specific, right? So I touched on there's an estate tax as well as the federal estate tax. And this says, out of state property, right? So you just got to think there's going to be state tax implications for a lot of what your parents have if there's out of state property, if there's an estate tax liability, and for just regular distributions from accounts and whatever it might be. Do steps need to be taken to reduce your parents' risk of elder abuse? If so, consider freezing their credit, right? And this is one you see a lot of aging people being preyed on with these scams, and it must be effective because it seems like it doesn't stop, right? And it's good to kind of maybe step in and help the aging parents who don't understand maybe a lot of the tech stuff or a lot of the, I think the younger generation is more keen to spot a scam or a fraud, right? And this is saying, you could go in and freeze their credit, right? If your parents are at the end of their kind of financial lives and they're into their golden years, and you don't foresee them needing to do anything with their credit, why not freeze it, right? You can always unfreeze it, but if you freeze it, you kind of lower the risk of, or help them freeze it, right? All these things I'm saying, you're helping them do, right? It's ultimately their decision. But if you help them freeze their credit, then you can, maybe reduce the risk of bad things happening with scams and anything else like that. All right. Well, I didn't touch on everything here in this checklist, this resource. I just wanted to kind of go through some of the main topics here and give some food for thought. Again, this was what issues should I consider for my aging parents. The full checklist will be on the website. And as always, if there's anything you want me to talk about on the show, in particular, any topic, just email it over to aloha@hawaiiretirementshow.com, and catch everyone on the next one.
The opinions and statements presented on this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Never make any investment or financial decisions based on information offered on this show without first consulting your financial, legal, or tax advisor. All economic and performance information mentioned on the show is historical in nature and is not indicative of any future results. All indices mentioned on this show are unmanaged and cannot be invested in directly. All information is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. Lastly, all opinions opinions expressed by Jason Cutitta and any guests on the show are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of or are endorsed by ToBA Financial. For Jason Cutitta, investment advisory services are offered through ToBA Financial LLC, a registered investment advisor offering advisory services in the state of Hawaii and in other jurisdictions where exempt from registration.